going to be talking about Paul Ryan as Mr. Republican from here on out. I would like to request that we please define our terms. Paul Ryan is most often described in the mainstream media as a fiscal conservative, right? Romney picks fiscal conservative Paul Ryan as running mate. Here's ABC explaining the morning of the announcement who this Paul Ryan is. Quote, Ryan, 42, a 7-term congressman from Janesville, Wisconsin, is known as a fiscal conservative. Slate.com. A wonderful thing has happened for this country. Paul Ryan will be the Republican nominee for vice president. Ryan is a real fiscal conservative. This is just the shorthand for describing what Paul Ryan is. He's a fiscal conservative. My favorite definition of what it means to be a conservative, period, is from the mission statement from the National Review magazine, which William F. Buckley wrote in 1955. He said the National Review would, quote, stand athwart history, yelling, stop. Well, if being conservative means you are standing athwart history yelling stop, if they're saying stop with the progress, keep things as they are, conserve what exists, and fight efforts to change things, if that's what a conservative is, what's a fiscal conservative? The way we use the term fiscal conservative, it's supposed to mean not somebody opposed to progress whole scale, but somebody opposed to profligacy. In government, it's somebody who doesn't want the government to spend more than it takes in. That's the label that everybody is affixing to Paul Ryan, saying his fiscal conservatism is why he was chosen for vice president and why we should expect him to be around for a long while. If we really are going to be stuck with Paul Ryan as the face of republicanism for a long while, and if the term fiscal conservative is supposed to mean anything, we should get clear that there may be a lot of great stuff to say about this guy. But fiscally conservative is not one of the things you really can say about him. During the Bush-Cheney era, Mr. Ryan, as a member of Congress, voted for all of the things in the George W. Bush era that cost a lot of money and that were not paid for at all. 2 massive tax breaks, 2 wars, the Medicare Part D expansion, which cost hundreds of billions of dollars, the Wall Street bailout, none of those things were paid for. Every penny of their costs were added to the national charge card, asking future generations to pick up the tab. A fiscal conservative would not have made those votes during the Bush-Cheney era, but Mr. Ryan did. In the Obama era, Mr. Ryan is now pushing a budget that keeps the Bush tax cuts. Again, whether or not you like the Bush tax cuts, they are not a fiscally conservative thing. They were not paid for. They were just larded onto the deficit. He keeps those budget-busting Bush tax cuts whole, and then he adds onto them more than $4 trillion more in tax cuts that hugely, disproportionately go to the richest people in this country. Hundreds of thousands of dollars going to every millionaire in the country. That's expensive. How does he pay for it? He does not say. He says that's not his call to make. You may agree with that, or you may disagree with that. But the point is, it should not be called fiscally conservative. It is something else. In fact, it is something else very specific that Congressman Paul Ryan, until recently, was very, very happy to talk about.
The reason I got involved in public service, by and large, if I had to credit one thinker, one person, it would be Ayn Rand. It's so important that we go back to our roots to look at Ayn Rand's vision, her writings, to see what our undergrounding principles are.
Ayn Rand, more than anyone else, did a fantastic job of explaining the morality of capitalism, the morality of individualism. And this, to me, is what matters most.
That's what matters most. The reason I got involved in public service, Ayn Rand. Whether you are delighted or terrified by the prospect that Paul Ryan is the new face of the Republican Party, it is important to get straight that he is not a fiscal conservative. If he was, he wouldn't be proposing $4 trillion to be given to people who are already rich without specifying any means of paying for it in the budget. What Paul Ryan is not a fiscal conservative. What Paul Ryan is a follower of this person, Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand is a novelist who most famously wrote the book Atlas Shrugged. Over the course of his political career, Mr. Ryan has cited that book and Ayn Rand as the defining influences on his thinking. He told the Weekly Standard several years ago, I give out Atlas Shrugged as Christmas presents, and I make all my interns read it.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that sales of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged have surged lately with the Obama administration coming in. Because it's that kind of thinking, that kind of writing that is sorely needed right now. And I think a lot of people would observe that we are right now living in an Ayn Rand novel, metaphorically speaking.
Paul Ryan has since said that it is an urban legend about him that he was ever a follower of Ayn Rand. Dude, it's not an urban legend if that's you on tape saying it about yourself, repeatedly for years and with feeling. In Ayn Rand novels, she leads her readers to see the very wealthiest people in society as heroes. Heroes who must be protected from taxes, from the government, from regulation, from bureaucracy, from anything that rich people might find restrictive in any way toward them becoming more rich. The rich are heroes, and everybody else is a taker. And the more the rich have, the better for everyone. That is not fiscal conservatism either. It is something else. When the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, a respected nonpartisan budget think tank, looked at Paul Ryan's plan for the country back in March, this is what they concluded. They said, the new Ryan budget is a remarkable document, one that for most of the past half-century would have been outside the bounds of mainstream discussion due to its extreme nature. In essence, this budget is Robin Hood in reverse, on steroids. It would likely produce the largest redistribution of income from the bottom to the top in modern U.S. history, and likely increase poverty and inequality more than any other budget in recent times and possibly in the nation's history. Mitt Romney has been vague on the specifics of what he would do for the country policy-wise. Paul Ryan has not been vague. He has been really specific. And despite the hype, what he would do doesn't have much to do with the deficit. It's this Ayn Rand stuff from Atlas Shrugged and from The Fountainhead about how important it is to have very, 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 very rich people. How important it is to take care of the rich. This is a real philosophy. It is a fringe one, but it is a real philosophy. And it has nothing at all to do with fiscal conservatism. It is something else.
I think a lot of people would observe that we are right now living in an Ayn Rand novel, metaphorically speaking.
Paul Ryan, since he has been chosen as vice president, has been shorthanded throughout the media as a fiscal conservative. If you are going to call him that, please define your terms. And please express to me what happens to that $4.6 trillion that he shifts toward the rich. How it is exactly that we pay for that. And if that counts as fiscal conservative to you, you don't speak English. That does it for us tonight.